Colonel Rob Maness has a lifelong record of providing dedicated service to this nation. Having worked his way up from the enlisted ranks to full colonel, he served our country for more than 32 years. He has served as a bomber squadron commander, bomb disposal technician, Joint Chiefs of Staff Operations Officer, assisted the National Security Team with the campaign plan for the global war on terrorism. He authored the first theater nuclear war plan and served as the Vice Commander of America's largest airborne intelligence wing. Colonel Rob Maness is a true American hero. This is Rob Maness Live.
In Texas. All right, gents, I'd like to start us off with this quote from Rasmussen's director of polling. He says, so I think there's some good stuff that you can see as well, like the fact that Donald Trump is winning among anyone who says they're part of an organized religion. But Kamala Harris is winning big, even bigger among Democrats, among atheists. And she's also beating Trump handily by like 20 points among people who say they're agnostic or not sure what their religion is. And then Donald Trump is also winning with every human being in America except for people who say they rarely or never attend church. It's like some kind of weird holy war is going on.
America's Holy War. Well, welcome back to More War Monday here on Rob Maness Show, and we're live on Worldview Tube and our X Spaces simulcast. Are we in a holy war driven by demonic activity increasing on planet Earth? I'm not sure. Honestly, I've not ascribed to that idea in any serious way before the last few years, but I have to tell you, we're having this episode on More War Monday because we do appear, in my opinion, to be in a time of heightened spiritual warfare, especially against Christians and the Jewish people. You just heard something very interesting. That was mainstream pollster Rasmussen admitting that God is the dividing factor, exclaiming, quote, it's like some kind of weird holy war is going on, unquote. Well, Gary Boris says, yes, exactly. We've been screaming this from the rooftops as Catholics for years, and especially here at Souls and Liberty, our country is at stake. It is easy to see this is a holy war. It's nice to see the mainstream conservative media and pollsters start seeing what Christians have been discerning for some time now, close quote. Well, Gary Michael Voorhees is my guest today and hosts In Depth at Souls and Liberty, a Catholic, patriotic, conservative news outlet. Mr. Voorhees holds a graduate degree cum laude from the Pontifical University of St. Thomas Aquinas in Rome. He earned multiple awards for 40-plus years of news media experience for writing, producing, and investigative work from the Associated Press, Detroit Press Club, and Michigan Broadcasters Association, as well as 4 news Emmys in multiple categories. Gary, welcome to the Rob Maness Show.
Thank you very much, Colonel. Appreciate it. By the way, I grew up in the Air Force. I didn't get a chance to serve, but I was a dependent, and we were all over the place back in the 60s and the 70s. Travis Air Force Base, Shepherd Air Force Base. I was born on Big Springs Air Force Base, and Webb Air Force Base in Big Springs, Texas. So thank you for your service, Colonel.
Well, thank you. I grew up in the Air Force, too, as a kid. My dad was in the 50s, 60s, and early 70s, so we probably crossed paths as little kids. At some point.
You may have. We were on 4 Air Force bases when I was a small kid in England. You know, the old World War II, Army Air Corps bases. They converted to Air Force bases, and now they don't have them anymore. But we were all over there, Laken Heath, and so forth. So yeah, it's good to be on with a fellow bomber.
I spent a little time at RAF Croughton. My oldest son was born at RAF Bicester. In the Cotswolds in the UK near Oxford and Fairford, England. So, been there many times. Well, Gary, thanks for coming on. I was really excited to see your work that's being done and to see the videos that you've done on this particular subject, especially. And look, I'll be honest with you, I'm not Catholic. I'm a Southern Baptist Protestant, grew up Protestant. But I see this as a time in the world where Christians need to be focused on Christianity itself as opposed to different denominations and those kind of things. And we have to learn from each other, and we have to call out the truth when we see it. And if somebody is in a different denomination that's able to see the truth because of their background or whatever the situation, then we all need to be listening and watching so that we can be part of the team to defeat this evil that obviously God's going to win in the end anyway, but it's still up to us to do the right thing in the middle of all this, in my opinion, because there's so much at stake here, man. So let me just start off with this. Am I right? Is it just an American holy war, or is this something? My gut tells me it's much bigger than that.
Yeah, I mean, America is the flashpoint, particularly now in the next 50, whatever it is, 80, 58 days, I think it is. We're the flashpoint of it because really, I mean, America is the world power / influencer. That combination, I think, is important to bear in mind. And because of that, we set the tone of just about everything. I mean, this is sort of ancient Rome, and the rest of the world is like the Mediterranean. They pick up our habits, our shows, our entertainment, our culture, our everything. And as much as some of those countries may hate it and revolt against it, they all embrace it. So how many French sitcoms do you see on TV here in the United States? Now go over to France and watch. The stakes are really for the human race. And if I'm just a big picture guy. If you start, if you start up at the 60,000 foot level, what is the defining reality of humanity? That God created it as a collective, but individuals to spend eternity, to be with him in eternity. From Adam and Eve right up to today. And the little, probably tens of thousands of little babies who are being conceived all over the world, even in the middle of this show. So life is from God. God is life. We share in his life. He's eternal life. He's everlasting life. We participate in that. That's kind of the definition of humanity. And we're a composite of body and soul in the material and the immaterial world. Unique beings in that regard. There is, however, on the other hand, a different being and his accomplices. Started off with the name of Lucifer, now Satan, devil, whatever other names, and accuser, destroyer, all those things, titles that he may have. And while the war is not between God and Satan, they're not equals. God is above everything. The war, as we hear in the book of the Apocalypse, St. John's Apocalypse, was between Michael and Lucifer. So that war that happened in eternity in the angelic realm, that battle, has now come down to earth, again, as Revelation tells us, and came down to earth at the very instant he was, tossed out of the heavenly realms, out of the angelic realms. So the battle is between those who accept God, and yes, there's a lot of imperfection over here and an awful lot of work that needs to be done there, but that's different. Falling into sin is different than embracing sin, calling it good, trying to get laws passed to institutionalize it, to criminalize you if you believe those laws are evil. That's the war that we have going on right now between good and evil. And they're not equal forces. And I think Christians need to understand that. Good is superior to evil. It's not just an opposite equal. That said, I think way too many Christians, Catholics and Protestants, probably for different reasons based on their theological cultures, but they kind of arrive at the same, too many arrive at the same point. About only half the Catholics vote, and only about half, a little bit more percentage-wise, of the total Protestant numbers in America. Only about half vote on each side. That's disgraceful. And while they both don't vote for different reasons, probably, painted with a broad brush, there is this kind of attitude among Christians, again, Catholics and Protestants, that, God's got this. Well, yeah, he does. And, you'd said it earlier, we know God wins in the end. Well, of course God wins. God's already won. So there's not even an end to it as far as God's concerned. It's over. It was over before it began. He's God. He's outside of time. That said, you can't people can't take a laid back approach. Oh, God's got this. God wants us as individuals involved in the work of the kingdom, of establishing the kingdom here on earth. Does that mean a theocracy? No, maybe, maybe not. I don't know. But it certainly means pushing back against Marxist atheism and communism. The example I always like to use, because it's kind of one of those, like, everybody knows the story, and I'd seen it probably the 1,000th time and went, oh, duh. The wedding feast at Cana. The mother of God turns to him and says, they have no wine. And what does he do? He has a little conversation with his mom there for a moment, and then he turns to the wine steward and goes, fill the jars with water. Why did he do that? He's God. He could have just gone like an I Dream of Jeannie thing and gone there, blink, and filled the jars up of wine himself. Why did he tell the wine stewards to fill the jars with water? Because even the miraculous, not because it needs to be this way, but God desires that human beings be involved in his work. Go out and, baptize all nations, teach them everything I've told you. Why was he could just appear in the sky every generation and say, here I am, and here's my teachings. He wants human beings involved in the work of salvation. And one aspect of the work of salvation is the type of culture, the type of politic that will rule a nation, a civilization, a world. This is a globalist effort to crush America. They may not realize consciously, sure, they don't even believe in the devil because they don't believe in God, so why would they believe in the devil? Probably a few of them that have like some Baphomet statue in their basement they offer sacrifices to, but the vast majority of them don't. I don't think you're going to, invade, the Obama's Martha's Vineyard house and find some kind of secret satanic altar out in the forest or something. They don't need that. They don't believe it, but they're doing his work. And that's the thing, again, go back to the Gospel of John. Again, I'm a big fan of, I love all the scriptures, but there's a few that, like everybody, have your favorites. When our Lord looks at the Pharisees and he says, your father is the devil. Why? Because you do your father's will. He was a liar and a murderer from the beginning. And because of that, were the Pharisees thinking that they were worshiping Satan or following Satan? Of course they didn't. That wasn't a conscious thought in their minds. But God kind of sets the record straight and says, yeah, you are. He's your father. So you've got a side over here that rejects God, rejects humanity, rejects America, because America is something of a breeding ground, if you want to think of it in that terms, for truths to emerge. Doesn't mean they always do. For righteousness to emerge. Doesn't mean it always does. But these things will never emerge in a communist regime. So which side does Satan want? Which side are they working? Well, he's working with this side over here. We're not doing it perfectly by any stretch. But this side is absolutely embracing of the evil, and they call evil good. Wow.
Yeah, I think that's the key, is they're embracing it, and they want it, everybody else to have to kneel and accept their embracement of this. And that is, in my opinion, that's the forces of darkness, pure evil. You can call it whatever you want. And like you said, the Pharisees didn't think they were following Satan for sure. Absolutely. As a matter of fact, Jesus set a good example for us about pushing back against the established order when it was necessary to do that in order to get his message out and continue that message of salvation to people. And I think that's one of the reasons why we need to be talking about this today. We've got a live audience over in Spaces, and I let them ask a question. We're going to take a commercial break, Gary, and then when we come back, we will take that question and talk some more about the demonic warfare. And I think I've got another clip from you about that, because it's important, I think, that people have a realistic understanding of what this is and what they can do. We'll be right back with Gary Michael Voorhees and the war on religion, the war on Christianity, the holy war, however you want to call it. That's what we're in right now.
hates human life. It was jealousy of us little seemingly insignificant humans created in the image and likeness of God himself that was the cause of their undoing. In their pride, which quickly translated to rage, they could not bear to look upon a vision of God physically uniting himself to the material world, thereby making it superior to them. So the demons have set out on their mission, which will not conclude until the end of time, to corrupt humanity by whatever means present themselves or they're able to concoct. At the present, they have corrupted a political, powerful party. Looking at you, communist Democrats, atheist communist Democrats, and then use them to influence hurting souls, to trick them into accepting the lie. Well, don't accept the lie. They hate you. They truly hate you. It's the prism by which you have to look out on all of this. It's why life is so miserable for so many under their influence. Communism is, in short, a foretaste of damnation. It's the precursor of eternal isolation, disguised as something else. The disguise, of course, will go away when you're damned. It's why all the social ills, emotional health, addiction, suicide, sexual dysfunctions, attacks on children's innocence, all of it is so rampant today. Demons, through their corruption of Democrats, have created an aura that all of this is good. But the reality of so much human misery tells the real story. Be aware of the lies vomiting out of Chicago this week as the serpent and his offspring gather for their family reunion. You are their target. God.
America's Holy War. Welcome back to the Rob Maness Show on Worldview Tube and our X Spaces simulcast. And my guest today is that man right there, Gary Voorhees, talking about the Democrat Party and how this demonic activity is actually working through a major political party of the United States, and that it's, I believe, completely taken it over. Gary, that's what I got from the clip as I watched it this morning for the second time, is that you believe, and I agree with you, that the Democrat Party is channeling this demonic activity that's kind of always there, because Satan, was thrown down here into this realm. But now is it because, let me ask it this way. What I believe I see over the last 4 or 5 years is an increase in demonic activity. And as I said at the beginning of the show, I'm a Protestant. I really haven't ascribed to that type of thinking a whole lot. But as my faith has gotten deeper and I see things happening in the world, it looks like it's increasing. But is that is that what's happening? Or is it just that it's found this method to get into a political party, one of the only two really major ones in the United States, and we see it more?
Well, yes, and yes. Two things can be true at the same time. Yes, it is increasing. It has increased partially, but not exclusively, through the taking over of the Democratic Party. And I'm not meaning to suggest that everybody or the leadership of the Democratic Party is possessed in the usual way we think of that, which happens. But, there are levels of demonic influence over an individual. There's temptation, there's obsession, there's possession, there's all sorts of ways that demonic activity can, work its way around us and then sometimes through us. So is the Democratic Party, speaking strictly politically, is the Democratic Party now an instrument of demonic activity? Well, of course it is. Just look around. They killed 25 or 30 children in the back alley of the Democratic National Convention in the Planned Parenthood van. I mean, they murdered between 2 and 3 dozen children in the back and celebrated it. I don't know how many guys. I don't know that there was ever a number given that how many guys went back there and had themselves, their vasectomy inside the same van. Right. But that's demonic. I mean, you've cut off your. In the case of vasectomies, you have cut off your ability to reproduce and participate with God in the generation or the progeneration of new life. So that part where you share intimately with the sacred, here's the giver of life, giving life in the form of the soul, and here you are, man and woman, but this is just vasectomy's part of it, providing the matter, the physical matter for the soul and the matter to come together. You have forever frustrated the ability for God to use you now to help generate new life. I mean, that's demonic. It doesn't matter. I don't mean like you were possessed and demons took you in there. I mean, you walked in there under your own free power. All the people that ran that van, it's all free power. And this is a tiny little example of stuff. When you look out into sort of the larger culture, let's stick kind of with the politics for a moment. So here you have the absence of any sort of border security whatsoever, regardless of what Kamala and the rest of the Democrats say. How many in those millions and millions and millions and millions of people that have come across the border, how many of those had children smuggled in for nothing other than sex abuse, sex molestation, sex trafficking? I mean, if that's not demonic, I don't know what checks the box for demonic. Innocent little children, and it's interesting in the Gospels that of all of the sins, and our Lord certainly names many, many sins, but there's only one that he attaches a specific punishment to in his preaching. Be sure not to give any scandal to these little ones, for their angel always beholds their Father's face in heaven, and be better for such a man that a millstone be tied around his neck and be plunged into the depths of the sea than to ever essentially touch, scandalize in the broader sense of the word, these little ones. So that's demonic. And the more people you have crossing the border, the more children you're bringing in for sex trafficking. So and then you spread all this. I mean, the same malevolent force that's behind that's going on a political front has also invaded all of the institutions. Matter of fact, you'd say they probably got to the institutions before they actually got to the political party. The political party is the one that just wields the power. The other ones wield influence, law schools, Hollywood, etc. But the party wields power, real power. And, don't ever forget, if Christians are going, well, I don't know yet, it was the state that crucified the Son of God. It was not the Jews. The Jews instigated, Jewish leadership instigated that. But they couldn't do it, and they admitted it as large as life right there. We can't do this. We're not allowed to put somebody to death. We need you to do it. And the state is the one that did it. So anybody who thinks politics don't matter, you better reflect on that particular passage of Pontius Pilate and Jesus together.
Oh, you're absolutely right, Gary. Well, let's go over to the audience and take a question real quick. Shell is our host over there. Go ahead, Shell. Who's got the first question?
We have Bill Elmore, sir.
Hey, Colonel. Great guest and great topic. You talked about reproduction. What are your thoughts on the birth rate these days by religion? And I'll just give you a couple of numbers. The Christians have a fertility rate of 1.88, which is well below the 2.1 kind of replacement number, whereas Muslims are up at 3, and all other religions are actually in line with or under the Christian rate.
Yeah, I think that's a very good point. I mean, I think one of the things we have to deal with, and certainly, Colonel, folks your age, my age, our sort of generation, baby boomer, or maybe the tail end of the baby boomer, or just into whatever the next group is. I was born in 1961. The sexual revolution really has to be pointed to as the changing, like sort of the turning point in all of this. But the sexual revolution didn't just drop out of the sky, and then all of a sudden in 1960, the FDA approves the birth control pill, and everything falls to hell. It did, and certainly set its path down there. But you have to back up 30 years to the Anglican Church's every 10-year Lambeth conference that they have. And in 1930, very significant here, talk about demonic influence, In 1930, 1,930 years, our Lord, the Lambeth Conference, the Anglican bishops, approved birth control narrowly within married couples. You know how that's going to hold up for about 8 seconds, then it becomes everybody. And it's interesting to note that who did that. I mean, the Lambeth Conference met every 10 years, still does, on the 0 years, and 10, 20, 30. 1900, 1910, 1920, the Rockefeller family, John D., started getting involved in the whole eugenics thing and thinking, hey, we have to, keep the white race superior and get rid of all these other races and things. This is the whole, ether that Margaret Sanger breathed in, and of course passed on to the Nazis. So all of that eugenics, they wouldn't call it that now, but all of this was combining. Their thought was, how do you get rid of inferior races? How do you get rid of poverty? By killing the poor, or don't let them be born. If you can prevent them from being conceived, fine. If they are conceived, well, then kill them. An interesting little stat to sort of prove the significance of this. Hillary Clinton would have won 2016 handily by millions and millions of votes. I mean, she'd have had a wipeout in the Electoral College against Donald Trump. But 10 million black voters never went to the polls because they'd been aborted in all of those years. So, there's a reason the black population in the United States has remained around 12%. As the, rate has gone up, although the viewer's point, I think Ed, I believe is his name, and thank you for that. As the population has begun to slow, blacks were never on the ascendancy. I mean, once this set in, and the idea of contraception and, hey, do all this and, make life easier for you and all of that, that spilled over into the Christian culture. It was accepted largely for the first 30 to 35 years after Lambeth. It was largely accepted. Contraception I'm talking about was largely accepted by most Protestant denominations, and maybe if not officially accepted, it was practiced and everybody just kind of agreed, oh, yeah, this is okay, there's no big deal, blah, blah, blah. It took a while, like 30, 35 years, for it to reach that kind of level in the Catholic, not the church, because the church still teaches vociferously against contraception as an evil. But in the pews, people were like, hey, this is cool. So why is the birth rate down? The birth rate's down because of contraception. And if you don't, stop them from being conceived, well, then you kill them. How is a nation that is 68% self-identified as Christian, why does over half the nation support abortion, at least on some level? These are troubling questions. I mean, American Christians have lost the understanding of what being a follower of Christ is, and the not just individual moral decisions and responsibilities that places on the person, in which hangs the balance of their eternal destiny, but also the collective knock-on effect of it in a culture. And you start to sort of turn the corner, and the boulder starts to reach the top, and then begin to slowly crest over, and then it picks up speed, and the further down it goes, the faster it rolls. So you have these cases of gradually, and then all of a sudden. So our question right now, and that's what this election is so vitally important for, I've said it a million times, in interview after interview, and article after article, commentary, everything. We may have been given a chance here as a nation, and I will say, though, I certainly don't believe we deserve it. I mean, justice demands that God rain down sulfur and fire from heaven on the United States. We've killed 70 million of his own creatures, human beings. Right. Every abomination you could think of that was in the Old Testament is, ensconced in law in the U.S. and called a right, and evil good, and good evil, and all that stuff. Really? But God's justice is always rooted in his mercy. He knows the future. So does he know that if given one last chance, because this would be the last chance, American Christians will step up and begin to say, whoa, they'll do a Nineveh, sackcloth and ashes. We were wrong about contraception. We were wrong about divorce and remarriage. We have violated the tenets of God as clear as the noon sun, and begin that because all these purifications always begin first in the temple before they get out into the city. And the temple needs purifying. It may be the case that our clock has run out, and now we're just watching that finish here in the next 58 days, whatever it is.
Yeah.
I hope not. I mean, I'm not on here giving interviews because I think it's over. I'm on here giving interviews saying, if Donald Trump wins, that's just a win in a very narrow political sense of the word. Now we have a breathing space to do an awful lot of self-reflection and say, how did we get to the point where we came within a whisker of losing the republic? So, yeah. Part of that, birth rate, acceptance of contraception, the wipeout of the American family. How did all that happen? We need to have Christians need to really start thinking along these lines. Catholics and Protestants. Yeah, you want to have a point to come together? There's a point to come together.
Exactly right. And we need to take a leadership role in our communities, in our country, over this issue, because we have this chance. Well, we got to take another break, Gary. When we come back, I want to talk about a couple of the institutions, get your thoughts on what people should be doing when we see institutions do the things that I'm going to show the folks here in this next segment, in this holy war on America. We'll be right back with the Rob Maness Show.
Hello, I'm Brandon House. I want to thank you for all your support at wvwfoundation.com that helps make possible pushing out 24/7 content for free. Without your support, we'd have to put it all behind a paywall. But thanks to you and your support through our foundation, we're able to push it out for free as a broadcast service and broadcast ministry of WVW Foundation. Please consider going there and setting up an automatic monthly contribution, or go there and make an occasional contribution. If you prefer to support us through the mail, you'll find our mailing address there at wvwfoundation.com. You can also call and make your contribution over the phone by calling 901-825-0652. That's 901-825-0652. Again, all these details are available at wvwfoundation.com. Thank you for your support as we try to help people around the world understand the times through the lens of a Christian worldview.
I ask you, do you agree that traditional Catholics are violent extremists?
I have no idea what the traditional means here.
Catholics that go to church.
May I answer your question?
Yes
The
or no?
idea that someone with my family background would discriminate against any religion is so outrageous, so absurd.
Mr. Attorney General, it was your FBI that did this. It was your FBI that was sending, and we have the memos, we have the emails, we're sending undercover agents into Catholic churches.
Both I and the director of
This
the
is
FBI have said that we
director of
were
the FBI.
appalled. Have said that we were appalled by that memo.
So then you agree that they're not extremists?
We were appalled by that memo.
Are they extremists or not, Attorney General?
I think that
Are they extremists or not, Attorney General?
everything in that memo is
Are they
appalling.
extremists or not? I'm asking a simple question. Say no if you think that was wrong.
Catholics are not extremists. No.
Welcome back to the Rob Maness Show. It's More War Monday, and we're talking about the holy war in America against Christians specifically. And my guest is Gary Voorhees today, and that was Attorney General Garland. Gary talking about the memo targeting Catholics as extremists, and they use the word traditional Catholics. And I think the congressman is exactly right. It's Catholics that go to church. You know, I mean, it's like saying a traditional Southern Baptist is somebody that goes to church on Sunday morning and Sunday night and Wednesday evening. You know, I mean, why are we allowing our institutions to go down this road. And I'm going to show you one a graphic from the U.S. Army here in a second. I'll call for it. But these are the Department of Justice, law enforcement, and the court system, and the United States Armed Forces are. When I was making a list of what institutions do I think are the highest priority, because all of them have been infected by this demonic activity, I wrote these two down. What should people be looking for, and what should they be doing? When I say people, I mean Christians, when they come across this type of activity.
Well, I mean, I think the first thing you have to do is realize that as long as they're in power, there isn't an awful lot you can do, because what is the only avenue you have right now is exposing it. And the only reason you expose it is something further will happen as a consequence. You can expose, and God bless Elon Musk for, buying Twitter, converting it into X, and actually preserving what little bit of free speech and social media platform that we have available to us. But I mean, Kamala Harris, she gets elected, and Elon Musk will probably be arrested, or X will be told to shut down. She's already said her stuff. No free speech, for misinformation. Walls is on an NBC Meet the Press interview from, I think, 2 weeks ago, saying there's no right to free speech for misinformation. So who decides what's misinformation? There's free speech for everything, and you let the marketplace figure it out. But that's not what they believe in, because they're communists. So I think there has to be an awareness. You've got to be able to talk to people, Christians who understand this stuff and know that this is what's going on, have got to be involved and step up. And I don't care if you're Catholic or Protestant, I don't care what denomination of 47,000 denominations there are, you have got to step up. Everybody across the board who says, yep, I believe in Jesus Christ. You have to step up and be aware, get involved. Your life has to revolve around the things that have the priority in your life. Obviously, if you're married and family, that first, a career, X. But as part of your spiritual life, being involved in the spiritual war that is going on in the culture is not something you get to excuse yourself from. Oh, it's politics, so I don't care. Oh, God's got this. Oh, it's more important I get to, Fred's barbecue this weekend. Well, I suppose as long as you're educating people at Fred's barbecue, that's fine. If you're going over there to have a few beers and, pass out and have a few ribs, well, then, you're clearly not engaged on the level you need to be engaged on. And, I really think the being involved in this sort of stuff at this level, and the idea is to get Trump to win. I don't know if people saw the memo that Trump released over the weekend. I saw it on X, but I'm sure it originated on Truth Social. Well, I would think it would have. But nonetheless, it's one of those probably 20 lines long posts, and he essentially says, when I win, we're going after the people who caused this havoc in the 2020 election with the steal and have turned this country upside down on its ear, and we're going to make them pay the consequences for what they've done. I was like, yes! But he's got to win for that to happen. If he doesn't win, and this all, is just the final sudden collapse after gradually increasing until the point that it suddenly collapses, don't be crying. Don't be crying on those trains, on the way to the camps or on those, buses that are taking you into the prisons. I suppose you can offer your incense, your pinch of incense to the gods of Kamala and company. You can bend the knee to them and apostatize to Christ, the country, virtue, and everything else. You certainly have that choice. That's what they want. But if you resist, well, you know what your fate's going to be. So, you're going to turn your children essentially over to the state to brainwash, mutilate, who knows what, make them available in California, to, your sons, your child sons, talking 10-year-old, 12-year-olds, it's a misdemeanor now in California if an adult male does something sexually to a boy. It's just a misdemeanor. So,
it's crazy.
You want,
it's crazy.
That's what you want for the future, then,
And to put even bigger point on it, bring up that graphic from the U.S. Army for me. This is just a few weeks ago. This is a training scenario at what used to be Fort Bragg, North Carolina, where our Special Operations Forces, the combat arms of those forces, are primarily stationed and deploy out of. And this slide clearly says the National Right to Life and Operation Rescue are terrorist groups. And if you read the words down the left side of the slide, it tells you demonstrations and protests, mass demonstrations, life chain, the rescue, the truth display, picketing on the sidewalks at the crisis centers, all of these things, opposition to Roe v. Wade, which the Supreme Court just struck down this year. So I guess they're a terrorist group too, according to this slide. I mean, this is the United States Army. Somebody thought it was okay, just like they did the Catholic extremist memo in the FBI. Somebody in the United States Army thought it was all right to put this official information in front of troops that are being trained on how to identify domestic terrorist organizations. And that's why it's so important to get Donald Trump reelected. I mean, you could show over and over and over and pile these things on, but my goodness, if your Justice Department and your armed forces are at this level, and these are all in the last 4 months, folks. The slide just weeks ago that it was discovered anyway. We have to stand firm and step up, starting at the neighborhood level and on, right?
Yeah. I mean, imagine, I wouldn't want to say the nation as we know it would be over under I call her Kamala, under a Kamala presidency. The nation as we know it right now would be over. Would there be sufficient appetite among state houses and governorships around the country to then begin to secede from that union? Because let's face it, you don't have anything in common with these people. We're not the same. So, America, that's just a crazy thing to think, oh, we're all Americans. Well, only by virtue of the fact of the land or the soil that we were born on. And that's where it stops. You don't believe in God, you do the work of the devil. You do believe in God, you do his work haltingly, not perfect, all that stuff. But, the primary difference is what's on the interior. These people want power for themselves so they can personally profit from it. But that power is manipulated by Satan, and he uses it to destroy. That's it. Power over here is meant to be taken over so that you can promote the good. Again, certainly not in a perfect fashion, not even close to it. I mean, nothing. But these are two different worlds, and they are not the same.
They are. And people like Merrick Garland, they won't even acknowledge that they're part of that other world. You saw his reaction there. How dare you?
Wouldn't say.
He doesn't even know. Well, we got to take our last break. When we come back, we'll hear from Donald Trump about increasing Americans' religious activity and continue to talk about this election and why it's so critically important that we get out there every single day. We got 59 days left, folks. 59 days. We have to make it too big to rig. And we'll be right back with Gary Voorhees and Rob Maness Show on Worldview 2.
We live in uncertain times. In fact, we live at a time when our own governments all over the world are warning us that there could be big problems with our power grid. World War III seems to be right on the horizon. Let me ask you this. Do you have a satellite phone? Should communications go down with cell towers? Do you have a satellite phone to get a hold of that college student or your spouse who travels, whatever it might be, to get a hold of your senior adult parents? We have satellite phones at worldviewtalk.com, and you get the satellite phone for free when you sign up for their very reasonable payment programs for the service. Sign up for the service with a reasonable contract, get the satellite phone for free. WorldviewTalk.com. You'll also find they have, well, what I now have, which is a solar generator. Yeah, I have a gas generator, an LP propane generator, but what if that goes down? I want to back up to my backup. So I now have a solar generator as well. You'll find them at worldviewtalk.com. Check it out today, worldviewtalk.com.
And he's in his 80s, mid 80s, and he asked me that exact same question. I turned it around. I said, well, what about you? He said, I think about it every minute of every day. And then a week later, he called me to tell me something. And he starts off the conversation by going, tick tock, tick tock. Yeah. This is a dark person, in a sense, but it is what it is. I mean, if you're religious, you have, I think, a better feeling toward it. You're supposed to go to heaven, ideally not hell, but you're supposed to go to heaven if you're good. I think our country's missing a lot of religion. I think it really was a much better place with religion. It was almost a guide, to a certain extent. It was a guide. You want to be good to people. Without religion, there are no guardrails. I'd love to see us get back to religion, more religion in this country.
Welcome back to the Rob Maness Show. And we're talking about the Holy War in America with Gary Voorhees today. Gary, that is one of the things that I think we're discussing here is that, our government that was established for religious people, the founders have said that. I'm paraphrasing them. One even said unless you have a virtuous people, the government as we designed it won't work. By virtuous, right, meaning, studied, follows the rule of law, that kind of virtue. So religion was part of that, especially Christianity at the very beginning. And Mr. Trump nails it. And again, look, God uses human beings, instruments, in strange ways. If you'd have told me 10 years ago that I would see Donald Trump say that, what he just said there, I would have probably got, I don't think so, but here we are. And we got 59 days left to get our chance. We have our chance. I think you're right. We have our chance to put this country back on track under the divine providence of God as it used to be.
Yeah, I think an important thing to consider here is that a Trump win is only a halting of the advancement of the evil from the communists. It is not a victory over it. It's a battle won, certainly. And I'm a World War II aficionado. I have been for, since 5th grade, I think. And Winston Churchill gave a very famous speech when the Allies had secured the beachhead by sunset on June 6, 1944. And he said, this is not the end. It's not even the beginning of the end, but it is perhaps the end of the beginning. And that's really what a Trump victory would be. It's one thing to crash all your soldiers ashore and carve out a little piece of land, in military terms, a beachhead. But now what are you going to do with that beachhead? The object of the war was not to win a beachhead in Normandy. The object of the war is to crush the Third Reich, and drive to Berlin and wipe it out. But it happens in steps. Well, if the point here is to, launch a war, a holy war, because one has been launched against us, and we just haven't responded to it, not in any meaningful way. This looks like the Battle of the Bulge, as a matter of fact. In the first week of the thing, with German tanks and panzers rolling all over the place, crashing through on their way to Antwerp, and with seemingly no way to stop them. That's what this looks like. There's no defense, and there's no retaliation. There's no real meaningful response. Except those brave guys in Bastogne who held out. That's what we have here. So a Trump win isn't like we won. A Trump victory on November 5th or 6th or 8th or 12th or however long the commies try to drag it out and make up ballots, an eventual Trump win is just that. It's just having established a beachhead. That's it. A beachhead can be attacked, borne down on, and be thrown back into the ocean. And we have to understand that. So, it's not just a day. Yeah, you can celebrate, sure, dancing in the streets for, a day. But then you got to understand, where are the institutes? Where are the real solid institutes of philosophical thought that have sufficient media experience to get out and present all of this to the public, to have these meaningful conversations? I mean, you just said a great thing there. Trump said, this is what I'm talking about, like sort of the natural virtue, the goodwill. Even though he's wrong on abortion, he's wrong on gay marriage, he's wrong on a bunch of stuff, he still, speaks things here and there in bits and pieces. And it's true. Religion establishes guardrails. Now, does that mean that every single atheist walking around is a serial killer? No, of course it doesn't. No. Can, in theory, an atheist live something of a moral life, at least based on his interactions with his neighbors? Yeah, probably. Doesn't have to be a bank robber or try to screw his neighbors out of money or some Ponzi scheme or something like that. Lots of people say they believe in Jesus do that. But there's no reason philosophically he shouldn't do that. If there is no religion and there is no God, which is what they believe, why is what Hitler did wrong? What a serial killer is wrong? It's only wrong circumstantially, meaning, we as a culture have decided that, a 30-year-old white male shouldn't go around killing children who are 10, 12, 14 years old. Okay, well, what if we as a culture decide, hey, that's okay now? So there's an objective truth that religion doesn't make, it points to. There's an objective moral code, and there's the natural law. The Catholic Church is the oldest, obviously, Christian, outfit that there is, church there is. It didn't develop natural law. The natural law was instituted by God himself. Catholic teaching just bows down in respect to that natural law. You can't kill a child in the womb. It's not a religious thing to not kill a child in the womb. It's a natural law thing, and the church just incorporates that natural law, natural truth into its teachings. It doesn't make the teaching. God is the one who made the teaching. The example I always, or makes the command. The example I always use with regard to this is mathematics. Man didn't invent mathematics. Man discovered mathematics. There was a pre-existing order to the universe that as we move through time and space and history, we come to learn. But what we are learning is what is already established. Well, the same that's true with mathematical law or arithmetic and science and all of these things. We didn't invent H2O. We simply discovered, hey, two hydrogen molecules and oxygen molecule together do this and you get wet. We've just come across the secrets of the universe that God put in place. Well, that same thing is true of the moral code. So that's a very good insight that Trump has there. You get rid of religion, and he probably wouldn't say right religion, but I would. You get rid of right religion and you abolish, the Aztecs had religion. They sacrificed children on their altars all the time. The land of Canaan was filled with child sacrifice. So it's not just religion, it's right religion. That's a very profound insight that he has there, that religion establishes guardrails on people's behavior. You punish people who behave immorally.
The guardrails are being taken down. I mean, you just perfectly describe what we see happening before our eyes with this thing called pedophilia. Child sex between adult and a child has been against the social mores for thousands of years because it's the wrong thing to do, and we've removed our guardrails so much now that these commies, and I'll say it too, I use that term all the time. I feel like I'm talking to myself when I listen to you about the communists, because the communists have removed so much of those that you actually have people in universities, in social worker settings, official government services settings that will actually verbalize that concept and throw it out on the table to see how far they can go. And there is no retribution on those individuals anymore. They're not arrested. They're not put under investigation, anything. And that's really where we're at in this country. And before we close out the show, I just want to talk a little bit about the biggest reason why this election is so important is because it's about the kids, really. That's the kids and the future of this country and the future of the world really are what's at stake here from what you have written and talked about. And you're absolutely right. The kids, they're being murdered in the womb. They're being sex trafficked. They're being indoctrinated before they can really read and write in communism and Marxism. And they're being taught to hate their parents and hate the history of their country and hate each other if their skin color is the wrong skin color. And that's we're letting it happen to our children. And that's why Christians really need to stand up over you for the last minute.
Yeah, I would just say that, there's like a moment of self-reflection if you're a follower of Christ. Have you participated in, because what's been the door into all of this that we're at now? It was the sexual revolution of the 1960s, which just took off and exploded and got bigger and has now invaded every aspect of every, culture, institute, everything we've got. Unfortunately, even some aspects of religion, Christianity. If you're one of those people who grew up in that time or was the inheritor, the heir of some of that thinking, this is a good time to hit the pause button and say, wow, have I really contributed to this? Am I part of the problem here? I didn't cause it nationally, but I certainly caused it. I was a contributor to it. Did I do something? Did I help, decrease the birth rate because I was more focused on my own selfish whatever? So I just signed on to contraception because everybody's doing it. Do I not say anything if my adult children are shacked up with each other and denying the sanctity of marriage? There's a lot of soul searching that's got to go on. A Trump win allows that to happen. A Trump loss, now you're thinking along different lines. You still need to do that spiritually for your own salvation, as St. Paul says, work out your salvation in fear and trembling. But as far as your culture, you're going to be facing a different set of questions if she wins.
Absolutely. And they're illogical questions because these people will not listen to logic. They will not listen to values. They will not listen to anything because they're hell-bent on, I'll say, on destroying the foundation of this country to remake it into something that's really demonic and satanic, quite honestly. Well, thanks, Gary, for joining me today. I appreciate all the time you've given this audience and me, and we just got to keep getting the word out. Gary Voorhees, you can find him on X. We've had his stuff up on the Chirons, the entire show. He's a great guy. Go check out his show. It's amazing. This guy has done amazing level of work. You got to go check him out and follow him and watch his show. And then come back here tomorrow. It's Training Tuesday. We've got Ned Ryan of American Majority with his new book out for the first half hour. And then we're going to go open mic the second half hour and talk about what's going on in the election. I'm Rob Maness on Worldview Tube.